Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at Engelbrook Independent Views. As always, I am your host, Ryan, and joined by the editor-in-chief, Art.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Art is, he's trying to be polite. He doesn't like you, but it's okay. That's not important. Anyway, we were talking earlier about some of the issues that the Democratic Party is having, that it seems like they're kind of like in a crisis, that they don't have a clear direction and they don't have any good leadership anymore. Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, I think the Democratic Party is on their way completely, disintegrating into. I feel that probably before the 2026 midterms, I think we're going to end up with the Democratic Party fracturing into two separate parties. You're going to have the centrists and the moderate Democrats, and then you're going to have the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. I don't know how they're going to split or what they're going to do, but the Democrat Party right now is completely, you could say they're in the wilderness, the woods, whatever, but they're on their way out. It's
So I've noticed that there are multiple commentators talking about this. And this is the first time in my lifetime that I actually ever remember hearing of a political party having to split because the different factions are just too far apart that they can't maintain a single group. Uh,
Well, I think what's happened is for the past, I would say 60 plus years, the Democrat Party has, promised they were the party of the working people, and they promised the world to everybody and really never delivered on anything. And the Democrat Party has transformed themselves into the party of the coastal elites now. They really don't care. I mean, they've put down the average middle class working voter. They basically thumb their nose, and a lot of the people have wised up to them. And I think that has a lot to do with the immigration issues that are going on.
So I do see that, and so I also have seen just in the past 10 years, the Democratic shift from their core base of constituents to corporate donors. And it's not just in the messaging, it's also in their actions, and the amount of money that they're taking to their campaigns. So I think it is pretty obvious now that the Democratic Party has lost their way and essentially was just trying to maintain being in elected positions rather than actually representing their constituents.
Well, they wanted to, their whole plan was, once I think most Democrats rose up through the ranks of the Democratic Party, coming from basically nothing and then benefiting off of politics and becoming wealthy from lobbyists and donor money to becoming a power structure. When they got a little taste of that, I think this is what's caused a lot of it, that they didn't want to lose power. And you have Democrats that, constantly are saying the Republicans and Trump are the greatest threat to democracy. But if you really step back and take a good look at what the Democrat Party actually is, they are the actual threat of democracy.
Well, yes. So it's not that I'm pro-Republican, or it's that I'm. So just for the record, for all the viewers, I'm an independent. I don't like either side. I think they're both wrong on all things all the time. Um, but what I've seen with the Democrats is they got rid of primaries for presidents. Hillary Clinton was pushed through because they wanted her instead of Bernie. And then when it was Joe Biden, it was the same thing. He got pushed through too. And then when Joe Biden left the race, it was just Kamala was just pushed in. So they have been actively subverting democratic elections to advance the party line.
Well, that's correct. I mean, their biggest, the Democratic Party, their biggest stance was that because Kamala Harris was running on the same ticket as Joe Biden, she basically received the 14.3 million votes from, the delegates and all. It's not that that's not what happened. They just pushed her through and put her
Yeah.
up there. And I mean, after spending over almost $1.5 billion, where did it go? Their messaging is completely wrong. They don't. it's the same thing with what's going on. I mean, I'm not going to get off into it, but with the immigration thing, they were bringing these people in, not caring about American taxpayers and American citizens, so that they can build up their voting base, get more congressional seats, and continue on their power to continue getting being in power. And
Yeah.
basically, they've turned their backs on their constituents and tax-paying citizens.
And from my point of view, it's not the entire Democratic Party. It's mostly a few key players. It's Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and a few of the others that are the high-ranking Democrats that have created a system where new blood can't come in. Like when
Exactly.
AOC came in and she was wildly popular, they shut her down and kept her to the side. That's why she joined the squad, because they would not let her in Democratic leadership. So I think it's just kind of like a mess of their own making.
Well,
They
they
the
they are.
few of
That's
them
that's
decided that they were going to keep it amongst themselves, and now they're getting old, and there's nobody left to take the reins because there's been no system of what do you call that, of teaching leadership.
no, you're right there. I mean, if you look at it right now, I mean, yeah, AOC is the highest ranking person right now. She could possibly be, which I'm hoping for, she'll be the 2028 candidate for president. And I mean, wait till people really get to see what her things are. You know, it, they talk about we're heading towards a dictatorship in this country. They're heading this country into socialism, which is going to be the downfall of America. It's not going to be Trump and the MAGA Republicans in the House and Senate. It's going to be the Democrats that will cause the country to collapse.
Well, so this is why I see the party splitting, because I remember AOC saying when she first got to Congress that um, in a normal political system, she and Joe Biden would not be in the same party.
Right, right. I remember that.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, no, that's true. And you shouldn't be in the same party. So I do think that we're gonna have the Democratic Socialists, the AK or
Well,
a
the
la Bernie
Bernie,
Sanders,
yeah.
yeah, and AOC and those types go to one side, and then we're gonna see the center left. But I think the center left is gonna fall apart because I think there's a lot of people that are in that section of the Democratic Party that don't actually have any real political beliefs.
Well, it's like AOC. She's never brought anything up for to be voted on. Never brought up anything. I mean, here is a person that's sitting there saying she's for the working people. We're gonna get rid of the oligarchy and and all that stuff. But she's the one that killed the in her district when Amazon wanted to open up a place there. A distribution center. She killed it, costing thousands and thousands of jobs.
Be fair though, as someone who has worked in New York City and been through those neighborhoods, they would have had to evict hundreds of people in order to build that facility. So
Correct.
I, so yeah, it would have been a great boon,
Yeah,
an
but it would have
economic
get
boon.
if you look at it, yes, you would have had to evict people from housing, okay? But they could have found other places to live. And the point was it would have brought an increase into people being able to pull themselves higher up the food
Yeah,
chain.
and
Not that I'm a fan of Jeff Bezos, but the point is he does pay, a decent rate for the average person starting there
well,
and also giving medical benefits.
the other thing to consider is that anybody who would have had to be evicted would probably have been compensated above what their property values were, etc. Or if
Right,
they're
right,
renters, they would have been given enough money to go find a nice place somewhere
right.
nearby.
But it would have bettered the neighborhoods. It would have.
Yeah, I don't agree with killing it. I think that there probably should have been more earnest negotiations to make it actually happen.
Right, right. I agree. But I mean, you look at the Democratic Party today with, Senator Van Hollen going down to El Salvador. I mean, he was the one that got up and walked out during the joint session of Congress addressed by Trump. He walked out when Trump was, announcing Patty Moore and Rachel Morin's
Yeah.
mother, who was, brutally killed, and all the other people that fell prey to immigrant violence. I mean, to me, it makes no sense. You got Cory Booker, now he's going to go down there. He's trying to put a delegation together. This is the man that stood up for 25 hours and 5 minutes and talked about absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this guy Abrego Garcia has become a cause celebrite. Like,
Right.
it's not. It doesn't actually matter what happens to him for this country, and that's one of the things that I find so objectionable about all of it. Is like he's not a citizen. He had a deportation notice. Okay, he wasn't supposed to go to El Salvador, but he was supposed to be out of the country.
Right.
And what are we going to do? Like, what is going to benefit the American people by caring about which country he lives in now? How is this helpful to American citizens?
No,
I'm not seeing it.
I don't see it either. And I mean, if Van Hollen finally got to meet with him, and if you saw him, he doesn't look like he's being starved or any of that stuff.
No, he looks fine.
Yeah, he
He,
looks fine, basically.
and he's in civilian clothes, so they
Yeah.
still kept his possessions. So the whole thing is just ridiculous. And like I understand the Democrats want to have like a win over Trump, but this is what you want to
Well,
win
that's what
over?
they keep
I
saying. They keep, you have the mainstream media saying, oh, well, the Democrats are going to die on this hill. They're not dying on a hill. They're basically killing themselves. I mean, the problem is I think that the Democratic Party and a lot of Democrat House members and senators have found out that the people that they've been using for the past 6 decades have finally wised up and that stuff. You're hearing, so they're bringing this new voter base in to try to take over things.
yeah.
I mean, if you look at it, I mean, to me, it makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, you're not defending. I mean, even Hakeem Jeffries, not yesterday, day before, made a statement that people should be deported that are breaking the law, but we need to protect our dreamers and we need to protect hardworking, immigrants that have come into this country. Yes, if they come in the right way.
Yeah, and so the other thing, I mean, I made this point on the last conversation that we had that for me, I think Abrego Garcia should be taken out of El Salvador and placed in any other country just for the fact that that follows the rule of law from the judicial rulings.
Right.
But for the Democrats to make this like something that is important to the average American citizen is ludicrous.
Well,
What do we
and the other
care?
thing is,
What
it's
what
like
is the point?
they've become a party of, like I said before, they become a party of fear. They support criminals. You know, to me, it makes no sense. It was like Elizabeth Warren. I think I said this in one of our other episodes. Elizabeth Warren kind of Senator Warren justifying Luigi Mangione when he killed the United Healthcare, the CEO
Yeah.
of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson. Well, I kind of understand it. He was a coward. He shot the man in the back. If you're going to kill somebody for a point, call the man, have him turn around and shoot him. I mean, I don't mean to get,
Here's a knife. Make it personal.
yeah. But the point is, it's become just, it's a farce. Now they're screaming that Garcia didn't get due process. Yes, he did get due process. He
Yeah,
was
he was in court a couple times.
he was adjudicated by two immigration courts, one a appellate division, saying that he's deportable. They
Yeah.
have ties that he is to crime, but yet the Democrats are going out and they're supporting him. The father, the Maryland father, who's a union member, who's this, who's that. Well, he's picked up in Tennessee with 6 migrants in his car. That
Was it
that
Tennessee or Texas?
No, it was Tennessee. They
Oh, it
pulled
was
him over in
Tennessee. Okay.
Tennessee. I did a little research. He was pulled over with 6 migrants, all using his address, coming from El Salvador.
Yeah.
Now things are coming out that he had a tattoo on his leg that makes him a high-ranking official in
I
MS-13. More
think
stuff.
I if I remember the reports correctly, it
Excuse me.
was the guy that he was picked up with that has that tattoo on his leg with the devil showing that he's a high-ranking official.
They're saying that he had it too.
So I know that the informant said that he was at not the highest level, but I think the
No,
term
he's
is
a
like
he's a
cheque.
high-ranking.
Yeah, a ranking member.
Yeah, a
That's what
person within Senate.
the
But
informant
like I said, getting back to the Democrats, I mean, I remember after Trump took presidency, Governor Murphy and his wife going on, basically daring Tom Holman to come and get his illegal, his she did his housekeeper that he was going to allow to stay in her garage because all of her immigration papers weren't in order. Okay. And then when he's pushed back on that, well, I didn't mean it that way. Murphy has let probably 400,000 illegal migrants into this state. He's destroyed our school system with what's going on. We're paying an average of $4 billion a year to support illegal migrants, but yet we have people that are living in poverty and living on the streets,
Yeah.
sleeping at train stations.
One of the things that kind of puts everything about Murphy into frame for me was his stance on the black bear hunt. Now, I am a hunter, and I
Right.
believe that hunting is a part of natural resource management. And when it's done correctly and well regulated, it's a good thing. And Murphy was like, he listened to a couple dozen people out of a state filled with 8 million. And these couple dozen people said, don't let anybody hunt black bears. And he said, okay. And then people started getting injured by black bears. And then they had to bring the hunt back. So it just, to me, I'm like, that is just indicative of how this guy works. I'll listen to a small group of very loud people against the interests of the vast majority.
Well, that's the problem. They don't have any, they just go with what's ever there. Let's have cash bail. Let's get rid of cash bail without thinking of what's going to happen, that these people are going to come out of jail again and commit crimes. Let's flood all these immigrants into New Jersey, not taking into account what's going to happen to our school system and our healthcare system. They don't do that. It's like, Murphy sued Middletown Township, his hometown, because the teachers wanted to be able to tell the parents if their children were saying they were, if a girl was saying she was a boy and a boy was saying she was a girl, sued the school district to block it. To
Yeah.
me, to me, it doesn't, there's no thought down the road of the ramifications of what their policies are putting in place. That's
So,
where I'm.
but that's hour by hour politics. And talking about the Democrats and like the governor race in New Jersey, Mayor Fulop of Jersey City is running for governor, and I was the forester for Jersey City while he was in office, and he made my job impossible to do. It's one of the reasons why I left, because anytime he gets a phone call or somebody says something to him, he's immediately on that person's side. And then as soon as someone tells him something different, he changes to that.
Right.
So he was flip-flopping, waffling, whatever you want to call it, 8 times in a single day. And I'm trying to run a crew of workers and a program for the entire city. I can't change directions back and forth 8 times a day.
No.
It's I don't know if that's a Democratic thing, but I've seen it in Fulop, and we're seeing it in Murphy, and I
You're
don't.
seeing
Yeah,
it.
I
You're seeing it in Cory Booker. You're seeing it in everybody. It's like getting back to it. There's no ramifications. They don't think of the They don't think of the outcome or the consequences that their policies or their stances are going to cause to their constituents or taxpayers.
well, to
Thank
be
God.
fair, some of the Republican firebrands do have that same
Oh
method of
yes, yes,
operating.
yes. But it used to be, it didn't matter what the Republicans, the Republicans used to go in every different direction. Now they're kind of united, but the Democrats still, to this day, no matter what is up there, they stick together and they vote on it. But for people in New Jersey, you should be lucky that, we have a lot of blue cities, cities in New Jersey, sanctuary cities that are protecting illegal migrants. Thank God the 21 prosecutors' offices do a fantastic job in combating that crime. But being a crime reporter, seeing, you can't get the full information on things, and you
Yeah,
can't
so if
really.
so, our viewers don't actually know about that. Could you explain to them what you've told me about that?
Well, basically, you can't, they do not release if the person is a
No,
Mexican.
who's they?
The prosecutor's office, the
Okay.
individual prosecutor's office. They don't, I can't confirm it, but just from the volume of articles that I write and publish, I can't confirm, but it seems to me as if they're being, I don't know, if they have themselves handcuffs on, preventing them from releasing, is this person El Salvadorian national? Is he a Honduran national?
So it's your belief, based on your experience,
Yeah, that
that the prosecutors'
Murphy,
offices are not releasing all the information about the individuals that have been
because
arrested.
I believe their hands are being tied by the Murphy administration and Governor Platkin. I believe I'm a Attorney General.
Do you know for a fact that they're purposely omitting that information?
I don't know that for a fact, and I don't want to speculate on it, but
Okay.
I can just tell if you do further digging and I go into the federal database on somebody put their name in and I search 15 or 20 different companies, it'll, data countries, it'll come up that they're in the country legally. But
Okay.
you have to find out what their birthplace country is in order to do that. So, I could have one of my researchers sit there for 5 hours going through, putting every country in to find out if they're being detained
Yeah.
on a federal immigration warrant. But I mean, to me, it just, what goes on there, they don't even think about it. I mean, at least New Jersey, when somebody's charged, most of the time, if it's a violent crime, they're detained. If it's a child pornography offense, they're detained. If it's sexual thing, anything of violence, they're detained. Usually arrests and shootings throughout New Jersey and fatal shootings and homicides, the suspect is usually apprehended within 7 to 10 days, which is pretty, people living in New Jersey should feel fortunate about that. That the law enforcement officials are actually doing their job. But then you get Murphy that says, don't help ICE deport these people. That, to me, you have 426 municipalities in New Jersey, 21 counties, and yet they cannot help.
So the thing that's frustrating to me about that is the unconstitutional aspect. The 14th Amendment says that the federal government has greater authority than the states. So for a governor to say to state departments, do not help the federal government, I'm like, that's unconstitutional. You can't do that. I don't care if the administration is fucked up or whatever is going on, but like,
Right.
you can't say the state will not help the state. You can't.
Well, I mean, that's also in there that, if you read into that 14th Amendment to that, no, and if you look under things, the federal government shall not impede any state in their laws. But this is a federal law that these people have broken. And under the supremacy clause, states should not do that. I mean, a little over 2 weeks ago, the U.S. Attorney Alina Habba, who was appointed by Trump for the District of New Jersey, has said she's launching an investigation into Governor Murphy and Attorney General, Matthew Platkin. I'd like to see where this goes. I want to see exactly where it goes. What's going to come out in the woodwork?
I'm gonna on my bingo card. I have Murphy has gold bars from Egypt in his closet.
You're probably right. But what I'm,
If Menendez did, why not Murphy?
yeah, I just don't understand it. I mean, they just, you know,
Well,
what?
so what was so insulting to me was, so when Menendez first went into investigation, there was something shady going on with like his dentist, and
Oh,
they eventually said, who was it?
yeah, he was getting kickbacks from a friend of his who's a dentist, and
Yeah,
and
and
he was going to Dominican Republic and Cuba
so
on
they
flights.
couldn't prove
Right.
corruption, but it was extremely obvious that corruption was going on. And
Well, see,
then,
if you
and
go
then,
back,
well,
I
hold on,
mean,
this is what bothers me. The Democratic Party of New Jersey didn't tell him, you can't run for re-election. We know you're a criminal. They said, put him up for re-election. Let's get him back into Washington.
Well,
They
that's
knew he was a criminal, and they had him run for re-election, and he won. They supported him again, and then it was only when he was found with gold bars from Egypt in his closet that he got tossed out.
well,
It's
yeah, yeah. Well, he really didn't get tossed out. They forced him to resign. But if you go back before the thing with his dentist, if you go back when he was in trouble for getting federal money to buy apartment buildings and misrepresenting that, sounds like a case of Letitia James in New York. I
the guy
mean,
was just corrupt to the core.
he was
And
corrupt
it
from
was
day one.
astounding to me that the Democratic Party would say, no, he should run for senator again.
Yeah. And what really gets me too, which I can't, to everybody out there, which really cracks me up, is you have his daughter on MSNBC on Prime, going off about scandals and this one and the Signal Gate and it was corruption and all that. I mean, she's up there saying that her father's been convicted and sentenced to 11 years in federal prison for taking money and selling his influence.
The irony is completely lost on them.
No, they have, I mean, getting back, the Democrats have nothing. They are just you know what they remind me of? They remind me of a swarm of ants that come out onto the sidewalk, and when the sun comes up, they scatter in every different direction. They don't know where they're going.
Yeah.
They don't know. I mean,
Well, so
you
I mean, they don't have
they're
um,
racists
competent
too.
people in leadership anymore. Like you look
No,
at Schumer and Pelosi, they're so old.
yeah,
Dianne Feinstein
yeah.
died of old age in office as one of the top-ranking Democrats.
There was a
That
better
is
one.
absolutely ludicrous.
There was a better one, the Democratic House member from Texas. I forget what her name is, but she was in a nursing home and still a member of Congress. I,
And then they wonder like, whoa, why are we polling so low?
I mean, they're right
Because you're
now.
idiots.
Some of the polls have them at 27%, but some of the real good polls, like Real Clear Politics, and that have them at like 21% and dropping.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then,
it's
well, it
like
was the same thing. Like after the election, they went into what is now called hope mode, where they tried to come up with any reason at all to explain why they lost that didn't make it their fault.
right, right. It's the same thing like getting back. I mean, I don't want to bounce, but it's the same thing with Schumer saying, right after the election, we rapidly appointed a bunch of judges that'll block Trump's thing. But they forget they're blocking his expedited removals of Venezuelan criminals to El Salvador because Maduro won't take them back. Okay, but you forget that during the last term of Obama's administration, he expedited over 330,000 illegal immigrants without due process back to their countries. So why all of a sudden now, what it is, the Democrats have played people for so long that they have a philosophy. If you keep saying something's black, it's black. If you keep saying over and over that something is red when it's actually green, they figure people are going to believe them.
Well, to
And
be fair, Trump's administration does the same thing.
yeah,
But
right.
going back to oh, what were you? I'm sorry, I just lost the thread there. We were talking about the deportations and Maduro not accepting them. Where were you
Right.
going with that?
Well, I'm going that you got judges, Democrat judges, that are blocking Trump from deporting people without due process. Like the judge up in Massachusetts. But yet, when Obama in his last term, Obama expedited the mass deportation of 330,000 illegal immigrants without a hearing, without
Yeah.
any type of thing. They
Well, that
rounded
that
them.
also that I remember what I was going to
And the
say.
best
That
thing
that
is, I
calls
don't
into
mean that.
question
Right.
the
The
idea
best
of
thing,
what due process is for someone who's in the country illegally. Because if you don't have a visa to be here, and you don't have citizenship, and you don't have permanent residency, you're not actually entitled to anything. You're not
Exactly.
supposed to be here. We don't
Right.
owe you anything.
But remember what Jasmine Crockett said, our fine congresswoman from Houston, from the Houston area in Texas, being in the country legally is not a criminal offense.
Of course it is.
Yeah, but she's a lawyer. I'd like to know where she went to law school at. I mean, where do these
The
people
law
come
school of
up?
YouTube.com.
I mean, it's, if you look at the actual criminal charges, immigration charges are federal criminal charges under Title 8. Criminal charges for murder, racketeering, all that in the federal stance is under Title 18. Okay. So this is what they think that people will say, oh, well, it's immigration. It's actually a civil detention. It is a civil detention. But if you're caught in this country illegally, okay, you're facing time in jail. Okay. If you come into the country, illegally re-enter the country, you're facing up to 2 years in jail if you, after being removed. If you come back into the United States under the Title 8, if you come back into the United States after being convicted of an aggravated felony, you're facing up to 10 years in federal prison. So to me, that kind of seems like it's a criminal offense. They're taking your
Yeah.
liberty away from you.
And so, to the viewers who don't know my background, my wife is a UK citizen, so she has permanent residency here. And it took over a year and a half after we were married for her to be able to live with me. We were apart, the Atlantic Ocean was between us for a year and a half. So we went through the proper channels. And I've worked in restaurants, so I know a lot of guys who came here under shady circumstances. And so to me, I'm like, I just want the immigration system to work well. And it seems like the Democrats are in favor of just chaos. And
Right.
that is really tough to deal with when you know these people personally and like they're your coworkers or they're your spouse. Um, eh, so I cannot understand why the Democrats just refuse to try and shape the immigration system to work.
Well, when our ancestors came over to this country, where no matter where, wherever they came from, they acclimated into the country. They learned to speak the language. They became citizens. This is just coming in here and just destroying everything. And the Democrats just sit there with open arms and welcome them. I remember being in New York when the buses were coming in that Governor Greg Abbott said you had a whole welcoming party of New York Democrats sitting there
And then
shaking.
what happened a few weeks later?
Yeah,
There was an unwelcoming party.
yeah. But they're sitting there, they're sitting there handing them gift bags and everything else. I mean,
My
the
My
problem
favorite,
is,
just to interject real quick, my favorite was when they sent them to Nantucket, and all the people in Nantucket were like, "Absolutely not, get out."
yeah, yeah, a Democratic state in an area. But I mean, it was even like Murphy when they came in on the buses into, when they brought the buses into like Fanwood train station, Secaucus Junction, Edison. He was up at Secaucus Junction where he ordered New Jersey Transit to put the people back on the train and send them back to New York. But yet he let the buses from Edison go into Highland Park into a shelter there. And then Murphy said, I know Murphy says, I'm sending them all back. They have no authority. But yet when Trump became president, this is the best. When Trump became president, he cut off funding to certain things, and you had the guy that was running the reverend or the pastor down there in Highland Park says we have 3,500 people we can't take care of because we have no more federal funding. I mean, so I mean, it's just the Democrats. They just seem to lie. I mean, every politician lies. I
Yeah,
mean, it's like the old phrase. It's like the old phrase. They kiss the baby on the cheek and they're stealing a lollipop from out of his other hand. It's basically, every politician's done that over the years, but for some reason, the rot in the Democratic Party is foul. I mean, it is really
the
foul.
Democratic Party. You know what? let's just sum it all up. So, from what I'm seeing, I've never seen a political party in crisis this bad, lacking leadership and lacking direction, and trying to please everyone and no one all at the same time. It's
Correct.
it's crazy that this is like these are people that are supposed to be running a country. I think they've all lost the thread. I think they took the corporate money and they all went their own different ways, and that's why it is the Democrats in disarray. And I know that's a trope. I know that's something that's been said many times, but I think this time it's really real. They are in disarray, and they are going to fracture and split. And to be honest, I would actually like to see that. I would like to see the Democratic Party split into two or three new parties, because then
Right.
we'd have more options.
Right. Right. I agree with you. Well, all I can say to everybody is we'll just have to sit back, get a lawn chair, and watch what happens because the story is going to continue.
And I know you will have a Mai Tai.
All right.
All right, well, everybody, thanks for joining us. If you agree with us or disagree with us, please put it in the comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know if we got anything wrong. If you want to fact check us. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe.